We have a couple of records in that implemented here as modules that refer to other records, right, using this foreign key, and we'd like to see how they relate to one another now. We see that that the modules object has a reference, presumably, to the course who's its parent. Yes. And well, let's see if we can get a hold of some of the modules. We know we had a list of all the modules. Where are they? Here it is. So find all modules. When it finds all modules, well, we're pretty sure that's going to load all the IDs, the title, the strings for the module description. What would it do for the course, though? What would it load for the course? You know, according to the relational database, all these other fields, you know, IDs and modules and titles, those are all primitive data types, right? Which map to Java primitive data types. Yes, and the other field in the relational database is a course ID, which is a foreign key, which is also a primitive data type. It's an integer. Yes, whereas over here we don't have a field that maps that integer. Yes, instead we have some object that presumably is represented by that key. Right, 4, 1, and whatnot. Yes. So let's see what happens when we ask for a list of all the modules and see, you know, what gets loaded for these guys. All right. So let's see. Let's restart this. Okay, restart it, and let's try and hit the this URL. I believe it's called what is it called? To get all the modules, it's just /modules. Let's do that. So /localhost 8080 /modules. Okay, notice that it's getting into an infinite loop. What's going on here? All right, it's giving me the ID, the title, the module description, and the course. Looks like it's trying to load a course for that ID 1. The title 5200 and modules. Notice that it stopped at modules. See that? I'm going to stop the server because I'm in an infinite loop. What it's trying to do is the following. When it finds all the modules, it does a query for all the modules, and it's starting to fill in all these fields. You know, the ID for that field, the title, the module, and it has the foreign key of the course that it maps, which is 1 or 4. Yes? When it finds 1, what it's going to do is going to try and do a join. It's going to do an automatic join. Let me see if the terminal printed it. Terminal. Oh, I closed it. Run. Maybe it's in the run. It's an infinite loop. Let's do the query. Select from courses. Modules, course. Well, it did a join, and when it did a join, to fulfill this query, it went down to the course to fetch the course, and when it got to the course now wants the list of modules. So it's going to go back to the modules that it belongs to, and then it tries to convert the modules into a JSON. The JSON brings it back to the course brings it back to the module brings it back to the course. It's an infinite loop trying to convert itself, right, into JSON, right? So we need to break that loop somewhere, okay? One way to break it is that we could break it any way. We could say start from modules, grab the course that belongs to it, but don't come back to the modules. Right? Or vice versa. We could start at the course, go get all the modules, but then tell the modules not to come back to the parent course. We could do it either way. Right? So let's do one first, and we'll do the other one later. What we're going to say here is that in the modules, when it goes to the course, ignore this. JSON ignore. Meaning, when you could try to convert this into JSON, don't try to convert it. Right? Because you're going to end up doing a loop, an infinite loop. Okay? Meaning, if you're asking for the modules, fine, get all the modules, get the course, the ID, the title, but when you get to this, ignore it. Don't try to go in there because you're in an infinite loop. So let's restart the server. Okay, there we are, right? So we have now all the modules plus any children. Notice that we're treating the modules as if it were the parent, right? That can go and fetch the link to its parent, really, the course, and we have the we have the JPA as the title. The course parent is 5200. Notice that these are all have cs5200, whereas HTML, the parent is cs5610, 5610, 5610. See that? Everybody okay? Does that make sense? Right. A more common way of retrieving this is the other way around, right? Is to fetch the courses, right? And then each course then have all the children as an array under each one of the courses. That would be a much more sensible way. You know, the way we think about it when we're implementing this, usually if you come to a one-to-many, you know, from the object-oriented point of view, it makes more sense to have the parent contain an array of all the children instead of the children having, you know, contain an instance of the parent. Right? Typically, we think about it from the one-to-many. Right? So let's change this a little bit. So instead of ignoring this, well, actually, let's leave that for a second. Let's go back to our controller, and instead of finding all the modules, let's go get all the courses. Let's go get all the courses. Now, for getting all the courses, just like, you know, how do we get the all the modules? Through a repository. If we want to get the courses, we're going to need a repository for the courses as well. Yes? So let's go fetch. Let's create a repository for the courses. So go in the repository and create a repository for the courses. So let's create a Java interface and call it the course repository. It's an interface. It's going to extend CRUD repository, and we want to be able to retrieve courses. And the primary key for the course, I believe it's an integer. Maybe not. I don't remember. Integer. Right? Now we can go back to our controller, right? And we can try and fetch. You know, we can auto wire that repository. Each repository needs to be auto wired separately, right? So the auto wire. Don't think because you put the repository underneath that would also be auto wired. Right? You need to auto wire them independently. So we're going to auto wire the course repository. And this is the course repository. Now that we have access to the repository, we can implement an endpoint where we can fetch all the courses. We can say get mapping that if I ask for all the courses, you're going to return to me list course find all courses, which is going to return the course repository dot find. Notice that we didn't override our own implementation, right? So I'm still using the old cast mechanism, right? There we go. Okay, so let's run this. And let's go and fetch ourselves some courses. So here, courses. There they are. Those are the three courses, 5200, 1800, and cs5200. Notice that the array of the modules, the list of modules, is being ignored. You know, because we have that, right? We have that's what we said, that when we go get the courses, to ignore the list. So we would, if we remove this ignore, what do you think would happen? Right, it's going to try and fetch the list of modules, but then the modules are referring to the courses. So it's going to end up in an infinite loop again, right? Trying to convert this. There's the infinite loop. Right, so let's stop the server there. So what we're going to do is that we're going to move the ignore to the course. I'm going to say, don't try to convert the course, right? Because you came from the course. Don't try to go back to the course, right? So that if we restart, and refresh, notice that indeed now we have the course with the primary key, the title, and then the modules are embedded inside as an array of objects. If the modules had other things, if the modules had lessons and the lessons had topics and the topics had widgets, right? This would be a hierarchical object that contains all the children, right? The parent with the children, the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren, everything, all the way through all the leaves. Okay? Probably that's not what you want, right? And oftentimes, depending on the design of your front end, you might want a very fat query where you send a query and you get as much information as you can to the user interface or whatever, right? And then you cache that information, on the client side. Yes. But then you have to weigh that decision on who else might be looking at this information, right? And that if anyone else is modifying this information, I might have in my hands something that can become stale, right? That somebody might be adding a new course or adding a new module, and I don't have it in my cache. Yes. So more often, these queries are shallow, right? And you go fetch more information as you need it. You fetch information as just in time. Only when you need it and to rendering something, you go and fetch this information. That's why sometimes some user interfaces, you click, you make a selection, and then there's a little spinner, right? And you make another selection, and then there's another little spinner, right? As the client is going to fetch this. It could get annoying, right? Having to wait, every time you make a selection, right? So you have to weigh, how, when does it become, too unwieldy and too cumbersome, right? In the user experience, on having to wait this, perhaps you do want to fetch as much as you can, right, to give the user a better experience, right, a more, faster feedback, right, and you cache as much as you can, right, so that you don't have to wait for fetching all these things. It's up to you. Maybe you go down to maybe just one level down, right, parent and then all its children, but not its grandchildren, right, and then when you go down to the children, then you fetch the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren, right, and you cache those as you go. Again, those are all decisions that has the pros and cons, and you have to decide for your particular audience, right, and your particular implementation. Everybody okay?